Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. Driving along, I, Mark Harmon, glanced at the line of houses from the corner to my place. Out of the 11 houses, I'd built 8. The other 3 were the work of Jake Toney, a local contractor. There was always a friendly rivalry between Toney Builders and Clark Construction, Incorporated, where I worked. Once, when Jake's team ran short on concrete, we pitched in to help him wrap up a project. Well, you know the house on the southeast corner will be the only one still standing after a proper Montana blizzard, joked Leo Clark, my boss. Yeah, keep dreaming, Clark. Jake laughed, unbothered. Both companies were staples at the annual 4th of July bash at Riverside Park, going head-to-head in barbecue, softball, and horse shows, before settling in to watch the fireworks together. Seeing Jake's SUV in front of my house puzzled me. His truck, with the unmistakable license plate Toney 1, was hard to miss. I parked in the garage and headed inside. "Hey Jenny, what's Jake Toney doing here?" I called. In the living room, Jenny's voice came loud and clear. Walking in, I expected to shake hands or exchange some laughs, but the sight stopped me cold. There was Jenny on our small couch, looking nervous, and Jake beside her with an air of smug confidence. My kids, Molly and Ben, sat on the long couch, clearly excited. "So, what's going on here?" I asked, holding back my irritation. "Mark, there's no easy way to say this," Jenny mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "Then just say it," I insisted. "Jake got a swimming pool," Molly blurted out. "And a boat," Ben added. "He said he'd take me to Lake Meridian." I held up a hand. "Jake, don't say another word." "Mark, don't make this harder," Jenny snapped. "Oh, I'm the one making it hard," I shot back sarcastically. "Now, let's all just keep this civil," Jake began. I said, "Not another word, Jake." I growled. Jake stood, and I stepped forward, shoving him back. "Mark, don't you dare," Jenny shrieked. Jake sneered. "I thought you'd be a bigger man than this. What part of not another word don't you understand?" I said, giving him a firm shove. For a second, I almost found it satisfying to see his stunned face. But then reality hit me. My family was slipping away. My own daughter was opting for a pool over me, and my son had his sights on fishing trips with Jake instead. The last time I took Molly to the YMCA, she barely swam, too busy posing for the boys. I'd taken Ben fishing by the riverbank, but he lost interest fast, leaving me to reel in the catch alone. After Jenny took the kids and left with Jake, I sat at the kitchen table, cracking open a beer. The divorce papers were there, waiting. Jenny wanted primary custody for $100 a month per kid, and half the cost for medical and schooling. I forced myself to eat a microwave dinner, knowing it would help absorb the beers I'd inevitably drink tonight. I had a couple but stopped myself. Work was still there in the morning, wife or no wife, kids or no kids. Jenny wasn't worth the hangover. Jenny and I had met when she was barely 18, browsing in an auto parts store. She had braces, a few insecurities, and a quick temper. She was struggling with a battery purchase when I stepped in. "The charts are right here, you know," I said. "Aha, but my car's not on there," she grumbled, pointing at her old beater in the parking lot. I helped her find the right one, and even installed it. Her dad, Bill Thompson, came out to chat. He discovered I was 24, worked construction, and liked Miller beer. "Well, son, if you're gonna date my daughter, better save up. She's got expensive taste," he joked. He wasn't wrong. Jenny's wardrobe alone told that story. A closet brimming with shoes, boots, and flip-flops of every kind. Bill teased her about it, but I didn't mind. I found out she was also passionate, which quickly led to a full house. By the time Molly was born, Jenny had blossomed, braces off, with a smile that could light up a room. But then she wanted more braces, clothes, attention. When our second was on the way, She decided I was due for a vasectomy. Not gonna happen, I told her. Family life curbed some of her whims, but her tastes didn't change much. And here I was, alone at the kitchen table, halfway through my third beer, realizing I'd need a lawyer. The next day, I went straight to Leo, who turned red with fury. "That snake," he muttered. "Yeah," I agreed. "That's exactly what I called him." "I wish I'd spoken up earlier," Leo muttered, dating through his wallet. He remembered seeing Jake hanging around Jenny at the 4th of July picnic. She looked too cozy, wearing a tied-up shirt and cut-off shorts. Barbara, my lawyer, listened closely as I recounted my story. She reviewed my receipts and bank statements, taking note of Jenny's spending habits. After making revisions to the divorce petition, she faxed the updated documents to Jenny's attorney. "We'll likely end up in mediation," she told me. "But I've got to say, Mr. Harmon, I'm amazed you managed to save anything with how much your wife spends." "Yeah, well, Leo's been a solid boss," I replied. Barbara was right. We did go to mediation. Jenny contested the revised petition, seeing the money in the house as her entitlement. She made it difficult for me to see the kids, smugly reminding me that I should have just signed the original terms. Meanwhile, Leo Clark spread word around town about Jake Tony's affair with Jenny. Building supply stores started refusing Jake's credit, and he struggled as his bank postponed a loan he needed for a new subdivision. Jake was livid. My weekends with the kids grew tough. They were sullen and distant, talking about the fun they had with their mom and Jake. We could be water skiing if we were with Mom and Mr. Jake. Molly sneered when I suggested a trip to the YMCA. "Yad, Dad," then added, "I even got a boogie board." When Jake bid for a new office building in Oakwood Springs, the board rejected his application, citing his personal issues. Leo and I, on the other hand, were part of the team that won the bid. Jake's frustration boiled over when his longtime painter, Ray Mangino, informed him that his paycheck had bounced. "Look, man, I need to get paid," Ray said, standing nervously in Jake's office. Jake couldn't keep his team together. Most had already moved over to Clark Construction. Forced to cancel a basement remodel he'd taken on, Jake's operation was crumbling. Even Jenny's attorney demanded payment, adding to his troubles. When Jenny tried to use her credit cards, she found I had canceled them. Her father, Bill, reluctantly lent her some cash, suggesting she apologized in mediation. During the mediation, Den Ward, the mediator, looked through the documents and frowned at Jenny's smugness over keeping the kids from me if I didn't sign her initial petition. "So, Mrs. Harmon, the kids are pawns for money?" he questioned. "It's not like that," her attorney replied defensively. "Mr. Harmon has continued paying child support faithfully," he pointed out. "Perhaps Mrs. Harmon should consider finding a job." A month after the mediation, on my 39th birthday, I called Jenny, hoping the kids could join me for a small celebration at Billy's Burger Barn. "Your dad wants to take you to Billy's for his birthday," Jenny said, her tone annoyed. "Do I have to?" Molly whined, breaking my heart. "Ah, Mark," Jenny started to say, but I'd already ended the call. She left a message later, trying to sound cheerful, suggesting the weekend instead since the kids had plans. That Friday afternoon, Jenny expected me to call about picking up the kids, but when I didn't, she waited until 6:30 to try reaching me. My number, however, was no longer in service. She tried again, receiving the same message. "Almost ready," Jake asked as he saw Jenny in a dark suit. "Are we ready?" She replied, sounding distracted. "Why hasn't Mark picked up the kids yet?" Jake spat, frustrated. "Great idea, Jake. His number is out of service," she snapped. "Good. Let him struggle," Jake grinned. With a sigh, Jenny slipped on her heels, telling the kids to get their things. "We'll drop you at your dad's," she said. "I wanted to take the Corvette," Jake complained. "Then let it go. We're going to be late," Jenny said, brushing him off. Jake grumbled but grabbed the Mercedes keys instead. The kids reluctantly got into the car. As they pulled up, Jenny gasped when she noticed a real estate sign in front of my house. "Come on. We're already running behind," Jake urged, annoyed. "Get out, Jake. They can't stay here if Mark's not here," she shouted. "If we blow this meeting because of your kids," Jake hissed, speeding off. At the beginning of the month, Jenny received her child support check on the 3rd, as always, except on Sundays or holidays, when it would come a day earlier. But I'd overheard Molly whining, "Do I have to?" and Ben's sullen "Why?" before Jenny ended the call that day. Sitting at my table, I finally broke down for the first time since my mother passed away. Jenny had taken nearly everything of value. The consignment store took most of our furniture, leaving me with a recliner and a few mattresses. They assured me that the kids' old toys and skates would sell quickly. Leo swore loudly when I told him I was leaving Oakwood Springs, Colorado. We hugged, and several of the guys at work bid me farewell. "Where to?" they asked, noticing my truck hitched to a travel trailer. "Maybe south." I shrugged, had enough of winter. Barbara handled the sale of the house. After Leo had the place repainted and recarpeted, the agent was optimistic about listing it for $160,000. I picked up the finalized divorce decree in Oakleaf, Texas, and celebrated with a hearty burger, spicy fries, and a couple of cold beers at Taylor's Diner. I even splurged on a $50 lap dance from a redhead. Finding work came easily enough. Silverstone Construction hired me thanks to Leo's glowing recommendation, and the pay was good. The work kept me busy, but the nights were long, living alone in my travel trailer. "Mark, stay for dinner," Palmero Romano said one evening. "Appreciate it," but I started, broom in hand. "You'll break my wife's heart if you turn down her meatloaf," Palmero said with a grin. "I'll just need to clean up first," I replied. "Do it. 12,117 Ferguson Drive. Don't be late," he called back. "All right," I agreed, nodding. The house reminded me of the big homes back in Oakwood Springs, Colorado. As I parked, a wave of homesickness hit. Julie Romano, Palmero's French-Canadian wife, was a round, fair-skinned woman, in contrast to her tall, dark husband. They were always close, a hand pay here, a gentle nudge there. Palmero sat at the head of the table, with Julie on his right, their 20-year-old daughter, Lucia, on his left, along with their 15-year-old son, Bob, and their 17-year-old daughter, Kate. It was a lively meal, except for the quiet moment during Palmero's prayer. I learned that Bob played football at St. Peter's High, and Kate, a senior at Ascend Academy, was planning to study biosynthetic engineering at Louisiana State. "Must get it from her mama," Palmero said proudly. "Not from this old guy." "Lucia, you're quiet," Julie noted. "I'm starting my last year in the education program," Lucia mumbled, her eyes downcast. "Since kindergarten, she's wanted to be a teacher," Palmero bragged. I thought of my own daughter, Molly, whose ambitions changed from Olympic skier to doctor to meteorologist, depending on her mood. "Good teachers are important," I agreed. "So, what inspired you?" "Miss Davis," Lucia smiled. "She was smart and talked about the world beyond Texas." "There ain't no world beyond Texas," Palmero joked, and we all laughed. Miss Davis, as Lucia explained, had always pushed her to work hard. Lucia had been valedictorian and was always on the dean's list, much to Julie's pride. "Do you have kids, Mr. Mark?" Lucia asked. "I had 2, I replied. My smile faded. "Lost them in a way." Bob snickered, but Lucia quickly slapped his arm. "Divorce," I explained quietly. After dinner, I thanked everyone and gave Palmero a hug. "It's been a while," I admitted, since I sat at a family table. The next day, Palmero barked orders as usual. Around 3, he called it a day. I stayed behind to clean up, hoping for another dinner invitation, but Palmero didn't come back. I ended up grabbing a burger and beer alone at Taylor's Diner. On Friday, Palmiro handed out paychecks and invited me to Bob's football game. I cheered for St. Peter's, even though they lost. Lucia was there too, in denim shorts and a team jersey, sitting close and touching my hand, arm, and leg during the game. On Saturday, I bought a strawberry shortcake and arrived at Palmiro's at 6. Kate greeted me, and July accepted the cake, laughing about how she didn't really need it. Palmiro teased her, giving her a hug from behind. "They're always like that," Lucia said, rolling her eyes. "It's what married folks do." I smiled, making her blush before she left the kitchen. Palmiro called her back to help set the table. "I can help too," I offered. "You're a guest," Palmiro protested. "No, I'm family now," I insisted. "Where are the plates?" Lucia joined me, grabbing knives and forks while I folded paper towels into squares. She laid the silverware on the napkins, and I left her to get the glasses and ice. "Hey, Mr. Mark," Bob called. "We played rough last night, huh?" "I thought you did all right," he said. "Just bad luck the other team showed up to win." I chuckled. "Yeah, that Timmy Elmont, their running back, is something else," Bob admitted. I discovered that Julie's jambalaya was a simple but tasty mix of chicken, sausage, pork, rice, tomatoes, onions, and bell peppers with a spicy kick. When she mentioned the strawberry shortcake, Bob cheered. "Yes, but I don't need it," she said with a wink. "Good, more for me," Bob declared, grinning. "Kids have a lot to learn about women," I joked. Sunday felt long. Not being one for church, I skipped the local service and the football game. I tried to sleep in but ended up getting up, throwing on shorts, a t-shirt, and sneakers. I took a walk to Echo Lake, noticing other folks around the trailer park who also seemed to be avoiding church or the television. A tan blonde nearby caught my eye, glancing around for attention, but getting none. "Yeah, I know the feeling," I muttered, watching her. Monday, Carlos and I finished the trim work, while painters primed and electricians wired. I picked up a broom just as Palmiro called over. "Hey, Harmon. Lucia wants to know if you're coming to dinner tonight." I was a bit puzzled by his tone, but answered, "Yeah, I guess so." "She's only 20, Mark, half your age," Palmiro snapped. "Hey, I haven't done anything," I protested. Palmiro gave me a hard look before turning back to yell at the Chitra crew. I figured I'd leave the final touches to Carlos and his cousin for the day. Meanwhile, Barbara continued handling the divorce with Jenny. She reviewed receipts and expenses before addressing her directly. "So, you're requesting half of," she started. "Can he chip in a little more?" Jenny complained. "The divorce terms are clear," Barbara replied. $400 a month per child. Half of medical and educational expenses. "But my car died," Jenny whined. "Mrs. Tony," Barbara began. "It's Harmon," Jenny snapped. "Interesting. Your failure to plan isn't my client's concern," Barbara stated flatly. "Well, where is he?" "He missed Molly's birthday," Jenny retorted. "We sent a card and a gift card to Billy's Burger Barn," Barbara replied coolly. Her assistant handed her a check, which Barbara signed and slid over to Jenny. "Thank you, Mrs. Tony." "I apologize, Mrs. Harmon," she said pointedly. "Molly's braces," Jenny demanded. "Mr. Harmon has covered half of that, and other expenses," Barbara said. "How can I reach him?" Jenny pleaded. "No," Barbara replied firmly. "God, I hope you have kids and deal with someone like you someday," Jenny snapped. "I raised 3 on my own after my husband left," Barbara responded coldly. "And I work hard. I don't need anyone to open doors for me. Now, please leave." That evening, my phone rang. "Julie is wondering if you're coming to dinner," Palmiro said. "It's chicken cacciatore, her version of it." "I don't think so," I started to say. "If you don't come, I'm in trouble," Palmiro chuckled. "All right, 6 o'clock, I agreed. I parked carefully at Palmiro's, ensuring I didn't block the driveway with my travel trailer. Lucia opened the door, her smile fading when she saw it. Going camping? She asked, still smiling. Moving on, I admitted. Her eyes filled with tears, and she ran back inside. What's going on? Julie asked, confused. Come on in, Mark, she said warmly, still smiling. Bob had set the table, and Kate was getting the glasses. Lucia, dinner's ready, Julie called. Lucia Romano suddenly bellowed, standing up. Oh boy, when she uses the full name, Bob muttered to me, you're in for it. Don't tell her mine, I laughed. Kate offered to go get her, but Julie shook her head. Bob, say grace. I'll go get her myself, she ordered. Dinner started, and soon 2 teary-eyed blonde women joined us at the table. Why are you leaving? Julie asked as I was getting ready to go. My job here is done, I replied, glancing over to see Palmero looking at me. But we just got this project rolling, Palmero protested. My part's wrapped up, I pointed out. We're starting the Great Oak National Bank job soon, the Monday after next, he argued, almost pleading. Mr. Mark, please stay, Lucia whispered, her eyes welling up as she mouthed, please. 5 years later, Jenny Harmon drove down Lakeside Drive, admiring the beautiful homes in the area. She pulled up in 1809 and spotted the shiny travel trailer parked on a concrete pad that Mark had put down despite her protests back then. The yard was neat and vibrant, with flowers and a decorative wooden wheelbarrow. She approached the front door and rang the bell. Yes. A woman's voice called out. Hi, I'm Jenny. Does Mark Harmon live here? Jenny asked, trying to sound composed. And you are? The voice was neither friendly nor welcoming. Jenny felt herself getting flustered. I'm Jenny Harmon, his ex-wife, she said, forcing a smile. Oh, does he know you're here? The woman asked flatly. No, Jenny admitted. Just as she reached to ring the bell again, the door opened. There stood Mark, looking better than she'd ever remembered. His blonde hair now streaked with silver, a bronzed face, and a solid muscular build. Yes, he asked, his tone unwelcoming. Hello, Mark, Jenny said with a faint smirk. Long time, no see. Yes, he repeated. Can we talk somewhere? She asked. Right here is fine, he replied. Just then, a beautiful young blonde appeared behind him, gently saying, Mark. Jenny turned to see the woman with long blonde hair, green eyes, and a soft expression. She wore a swimsuit wrap, suggesting they'd just been swimming. Mark, take her to the sunroom, the woman said with a friendly but distant tone. Fine. Come on, Jenny, Mark said, gesturing. The blonde woman opened the doors to the sunroom and stepped outside. Jenny glanced around and saw a large swimming pool with children playing. The blonde removed her wrap and joined them, her figure stunning. All right, you've got 5 minutes, Mark said, pulling Jenny's attention back to him. Really? Jenny snapped. We were together for 14 years. Can't you be a little nicer? Oh, my mistake. Would you like champagne? Caviar? Where are my manners? Mark replied, sarcasm dripping from every word. Come on, get to the point. Molly's getting married next month on the 9th, Jenny said. How far along is she? He asked bluntly. Jenny's cheeks flushed. 4.5 months. It would mean a lot if her dad walked her down the aisle, Jenny added, softening her tone. Do I have to? Mark mimicked bitterly, recalling the birthday when he wanted to celebrate with his kids, only to hear that same line. No, I won't tell her to get Jake Tony. Jake's no longer in her lives, Jenny said, a hint of frustration in her voice. Mark just hummed in response, watching as a little girl jumped into the pool, laughing as the adults cheered her on. The girl ran up to the doors, shouting, Daddy, did you see me? Yeah, I did. Just like a big girl, he said, pulling her into a hug. I'm Zoe. I'm 4, the girl said, looking at Jenny with curiosity. Hello, Zoe, Jenny replied, her tone softening. Sorry about that, the blonde woman said, re-entering from the pool. She's proud of her jumps. Oh, it's fine. "She's amazing," Jenny said. "She sure is," Mark replied, squeezing his daughter. "Show Mommy that big jump again, okay?" "Daddy, you have to watch," Zoe insisted. "I'll always watch you," Mark smiled, giving her another hug before she ran back outside. "So, why can't Ben walk his sister down the aisle?" Mark asked, returning his gaze to Jenny. He's in jail," she admitted, looking away. Do I still have to pay child support if he's in jail?" Mark asked, his tone dry. "He's still a minor," Jenny snapped. "Aha, but you don't have custody," Mark said, standing up. 5 minutes are up. "Goodbye, Jenny. You're really just dismissing me after I came all this way, practically begging you to be a part of your daughter's wedding," Jenny shrilled. "Did I ask you to come?" he countered calmly. "No, Molly did," she retorted. "Then maybe Molly should have come," he said, opening the door. "Hey, everyone, you all waterlog it." "That's it. My fingers are all wrinkly," Zoe announced. "That's terrible," Mark said, grinning. Jenny sneered. "You seem to be doing well." "Thanks to no one but myself," he replied, closing the door after walking her to her car. Inside, Mark joined his wife and the housekeeper in the kitchen, trying to figure out what the kids wanted for dinner. "Boogers and toes," he joked, and his wife chuckled. "Don't get them started," she laughed. "Daddy, I want hot dogs," Ross piped up. "Yeah, hot dogs," echoed his twin brother, Ben. "I thought you wanted hamburgers," Carmen, the housekeeper, teased. "I changed my mind," Ross said with a grin. "How about spaghetti with hot dogs cut up in it?" Mark suggested. "Yeah," the twins agreed excitedly. "Daddy, you're the best," his wife said with a warm smile as she reached for a pot to start dinner. After dinner, baths, and bedtime prayers, despite the boys insisting that swimming should count as a bath, Mark finally joined his wife in the bedroom. "Hey, gorgeous," he greeted as she came out of the closet in a t-shirt. "What did Jenny want?" she asked, kissing him. "To know why I still look so good after all these years," he joked, smiling. "Plenty of protein," she teased, crawling into bed beside him. "Really, what did she want?" she asked, resting her head on his chest. "Molly's getting married. She wanted me to walk her down the aisle," he said. "So, are we heading to Oakwood Springs?" she asked, giving him a hopeful look. "It's not snowing there in August," he quipped. "Mark, you should walk your daughter down the aisle," she said softly, looking into his eyes. He sighed, thinking back to how he'd met his wife, Lucia, at Grant Park. They dated but quickly realized there wasn't much romance between them, just two lonely souls finding comfort in each other's company. "Mark, I love you, but not in that way," Lucia had confessed back then. "I feel the same," he'd admitted. "You kept me from running off when things got hard," he said, squeezing her hand. Just then, a tiny Yorkie dashed by, its leash wrapping around a jogger, who tripped and fell. The dog yelped, and the jogger cried out, tangled in the retractable leash. Mark jumped in to help, freeing the dog and the jogger. He managed to grab the dog, handed it to the owner, and barked, "Hold on to your dog." The jogger, dazed and injured, had a swollen forehead and a broken ankle. "Get her name and address," he told Lucia as he dialed for emergency help. "The nearest vehicle is in Clarksville," the operator informed him. "Never mind. I'll take her myself," he said, lifting the injured jogger into his truck. Lucia joined, pressing ice from a nearby vendor onto the woman's head as they drove to the hospital. That incident was just one of many that led him to put down roots. After that day, when they had dinner at Palmyro's, he realized he wanted a home of his own. So he bought a modest foreclosure in the area while waiting for the new project, Great Oak First National Bank, to begin with Silverstone construction. "The house I bought was in rough shape, with spoiled food, smeared filth, broken windows, and even concrete poured down the toilets. I tackled most of the renovation myself," using my connections at work to get materials at good prices. While I was working on that house, the property next door also went into foreclosure, and I ended up buying it too. Later, I picked up 2 more foreclosures on Logan Drive and a gated community where the previous owners had overextended themselves financially. I eventually sold 3 of those properties at a reasonable profit, deciding to move into the 4th at 1812 Logan Drive. By day, I worked for Silverstone Construction, and in the evenings and on weekends, I focused on my renovations. My latest project was on Cedar Lane, a house I got for 1/5 of its value after the owner, who'd lost everything, had taken his own life there. The place needed fresh paint and new carpets, but the bones of the house were solid. One evening, instead of going to Cedar Lane, I headed to Lord Hospital to check in on the job that I'd helped after that accident. I didn't know her name, but I was able to track her down. "They cut up my shoe to get it off," she said, looking at me with clear green eyes as I entered. "None of them fought to untie a knot." I joked, and she chuckled. She asked what had happened, and I filled her in about the dog in its retractable leash. As we chatted, I had a strange sense of familiarity, but I couldn't place it. When she mentioned she was studying education at Baldwin College, it clicked. I'd picked Lucia up there a few times. "By the way, what's your name?" I asked. "Rebecca," she replied. "Yeah, I know. I don't look Mexican." "Anyone you need to call?" I offered. "No," she said, her voice softening. "My mom died last year, and my dad, well, he disowned me." I checked my watch, seeing I had a couple of hours of daylight left for work. I promised to visit again soon and stood to leave. She smiled a bit sadly as she lay back on her bed. That's when I remembered. "Echo Lake," I said. "Huh." She paused. "I've seen you before. You were sunbathing in a green bikini at Echo Lake," I explained. She blushed. "What do you have to feel sad about?" she asked, shifting the topic. "Well, I was happily married once with 2 kids," I said. "I named my son Ross after my old man, or Bennett, after my granddad, who could carve anything from wood." She listened, sharing in the moment. "So, what did you name him?" Rebecca asked, holding my hand. "Jenny insisted on Ben," I replied. "I like that name," she said with a smile. "I was named after my dad's brother who died in Vietnam." We talked more, and she asked about my daughter. "Zoe," I said. "Oh, I love that name," she said enthusiastically. "It was my mom's, but Jenny went with Molly Christina instead," I explained. "Do you see them often?" she asked. "It's been a few months. They're in Oakwood Springs with a pool and all the extras. They don't have much use for their dad anymore," I admitted, staying until an orderly brought her dinner. Surprising both of us, I gave her a gentle kiss goodbye before I left. The next morning, while I was working in the bank's main lobby, my phone rang, playing Back in Black. "Mark?" Rebecca's soft voice asked. "Yeah," I replied, wiping the sweat from my face. "They're discharging me today," she said. "I'll be there soon," I promised. I informed Palmiro I had an emergency and left for the hospital. An orderly wheeled her to the curb, and I lifted her into my truck, helping her with her seatbelt. "Where to?" I asked. "Home," she said, giving directions to Sierra Vista Apartments. Then she remembered her car was still parked at Grant Park. We drove there, and she pointed to a 2005 Hyundai Sonata. I laughed, teasing her about the car. "Shut up. It's cute," she said, laughing. Once we arrived, I saw her cast and realized she couldn't drive herself. "All right, I'll drop you off and then bring your car to your apartment," I decided. "That's too much," Rebecca argued. "You can't drive with that cast," I insisted. When we reached her apartment building, I saw she lived on the 3rd floor. "They didn't give you crutches?" I asked. "No," she hesitated. "And how are you planning on managing those stairs?" I asked, and she just shrugged before bursting into tears. "Get your key," I ordered gently, lifting her up and carrying her to her apartment. I then went to the grocery store and grabbed a few boxes. Where are those for? Rebecca asked when I returned, hobbling over to the door. Pack up what you need for the next couple of weeks, I told her. You're staying with me until you're more mobile. She started to argue, but then realized she had little choice. You live on the ground floor. Yeah, my place is a 3-story house, but I'll set you up on the ground level, I assured her. Now, hand over your car keys, and I'll be back. Oh, don't want to help me pack? She teased. No, I've seen enough of women's drawers, I joked, giving her a quick kiss before heading out. After renting a hitch, I towed her car to my house, unloaded her things, and carried her to my truck once more. As we pulled up to my place, Rebecca craned her neck, looking up at the 3rd-story windows. These houses are stunning, she said. I come around here at Christmas to see the lights. Christmas lights, huh? I asked. Yeah, they go all out here. It's like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, she said, smiling. Clark Griswold style, I asked. Who? She replied, and I couldn't help but laugh. When we reached the door, she stretched her arms out for me to carry her inside. Oh, are you carrying me over the threshold? She quipped. When I do that for real, you'll need a nice dress, I said with a smile. What's wrong with fiberglass? She joked, waggling her cast. All the models are wearing them. Yeah, they're really setting the trends, I laughed, setting the couch. She admired the couch. Is this where I'm staying? Nope. I'll carry you to the bedroom once I get your things settled, I said, quickly moving her boxes inside. Once I placed her on the bed, she surprised me by not letting go. Thank you, Mark, she said softly, kissing me. You're welcome, I replied. Need the bathroom? Yep, right across the hall, she asked. Yep, and just yell if you need anything, I said, setting her on her feet. I grabbed extra pillows and brought an old TV into her room. I even made her some soup, using an old cookie sheet as a tray, and rented crutches for her. The first few mornings, she lightly complained about being woken up early for breakfast. By the 3rd morning, she was already awake with her arms out, waiting for me to carry her to the kitchen. On the 4th morning, as I scooped her up, I noticed she'd gotten up, brushed her teeth, and returned to bed just to be ready for me. I like it when you carry me, she whispered. Honestly, I like carrying you too, I admitted. Palmero, however, wasn't too happy about my time off for Rebecca's doctor visits and therapy sessions. I'd been referred to Alice Jacobs, a lawyer, by a coworker, and she was helping Rebecca sue the dog owner, Mary Booker. The legal work meant I had to take a few more afternoons off, and Palmero was reaching his limit. Mark, we've all got stuff to take care of. Can't this wait until after work? He grumbled one day. Palmero, it's important, I tried to explain, but his frustration was clear. He finally snapped. So what's more important, this situation or your job? I kept silent. The next morning, Palmero yelled at me in front of everyone. I just smiled, nodded, and walked off the job site, leaving the arguments behind. You're home early, Rebecca said, looking up from her textbook when I walked in. Aha, I grumbled, dropping my things. Do I have an appointment? She asked, suddenly concerned. No, I got run off the job, I replied. She patted the cushion beside her. So I sat down and told her everything about the tension from my frequent absences, and of course, about Palmero's reaction to me dating his daughter. Why didn't you tell me? I would have had a friend take me to appointments, she said, genuinely worried. I wanted to take you, I admitted. But why? She asked, her gaze fixed on mine. Because I'm in love with you, I said. And I'm in love with you too, Mark Harmon, she whispered, leaning in for a kiss. Without a steady job, I started buying and flipping foreclosed homes, handling most of the renovations myself. Being my own boss lets me manage my time, taking Rebecca to her appointments, and even going on a few special outings. One afternoon, we visited the Hog's Head, her favorite barbecue spot. where we had an unexpected encounter. "Hey, Rebecca." A muscular young guy sneered as he walked over. "Oh, hi, George," Rebecca replied coolly. "Is this your dad?" George mocked, trying to sit next to her. Rebecca held up a hand to stop him. "No, this is my fiancé, Mark Harmon." "Mark, meet George, my ex-fiancé," I asked, amused, as the waitress brought our brisket platters. "You didn't know?" Rebecca grinned, mixing sauces on her brisket. Then she held out her finger, dipped in sauce. "Want to get married the day after Christmas?" I kissed the sauce off her finger, grinning back. "Gives me a month to find the perfect ring." She looked triumphant, and her smile widened even more as I imitated her sauce-mixing technique. "Good, that'll also give me time to get rid of this cast. And by the way, do you know how to do the two-step?" "I'll learn," I said confidently. On our wedding day, Norman Lewis of the Fellowship Church, a non-denominational pastor, officiated. The ceremony was loud, joyful, and true to Norman's energetic spirit. I'd learned both the Texas two-step and swing, and we all danced our hearts out in the fellowship hall, where the Hog's Head catered a feast for everyone. Lucia Romano came to congratulate us but later slipped away to a bathroom stall to cry. Norman's son, Fred, noticed and offered her a handkerchief. "Seeing others happy can be tough," he said gently. Dabbing at her tears, Lucia smiled slightly. "Yeah, I get that. When my cousin Amelia got married, I wanted to punch the guy," Fred admitted, chuckling. Lucia laughed. "Oh yeah. Sanity won, though. The guy's a nose tackle for the Baldwin Cougars," he joked. "Ouch," Lucia replied, finally cheering up. "Now, why haven't you danced yet?" Fred asked. "Come on, let's go," he said, pulling her onto the dance floor. 9 months and 2 days after our wedding, Rebecca and I were back at Greenhill Hospital, awaiting the birth of our son, Bennett. 17 months later, Lucia and Fred welcomed their first child while Rebecca and I celebrated the arrival of our daughter, Zoe. In the present, we found ourselves stepping off a plane back in Venus, Colorado, to make amends with my children. "I can't believe we're back here," I grumbled as I glanced around a small airport. "New Texas finally got tired of your shiny face," a familiar voice joked. It was Leo Clark, my old boss. "Less hair, more gut, but you're still you," I laughed, hugging him. "Meet my family," I said, introducing everyone. "And don't worry, honey, he has no incriminating dirt on me," I added, winking at Rebecca. "Harmon, ha?" she asked, amused. "He thinks I'm blackmailing you," I teased as Leo chuckled. "No kidding." "Bennett and Ross, I know all about you too," Leo said, shaking hands with the twins. "We booked a suite at the Hilton." I started, but Leo waved it off. "No, you're staying with us," he insisted, grabbing our suitcases. "Are you sure?" Rebecca asked. "Hey, it's Mr. Clark to you," he joked with a wink. Once we settled in, with Rebecca and me in the guest room, Zoe in Leo's daughter's old room, and the twins on the sofa bed, I took a deep breath. "I'll check on the boys," Rebecca said, squeezing my hand. "Take your time." I nodded and made the call. After a few rings, a wary voice answered. "Hello." "Hey, it's your dad," I said. "Oh, Dad," Molly said flatly. "Yeah, we're in town, planning on heading to Billy's Burger Barn around 6. Would love to see you there," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "Yeah, sure," she sneered. "I have like 1,000 of those gift cards to use up." "Great," I said, ending the call. Rebecca looked up from the video game. The twins were playing as I walked back in, noticing my expression. "Billy's Burger Barn, 6 o'clock, I said. And she asked gently. She sounded as bratty as she did when she was 13. I muttered, frustrated. Sometimes when I expect the worst from my second graders, I'm rarely disappointed, Rebecca replied, resting her hand on my shoulder. But when I drop the expectations, things can surprise me. I smiled. Don't know why I let you talk me into this. Because I promised you a special night, she whispered. You did, I said softly. There is that, she laughed, glancing over at the kids who were oblivious to the conversation. At 6, I gathered Zoe, Ross, and Bennett, and we headed to Billy's Burger Barn. Bennett spotted a Porsche 911 in the parking lot and begged to take a closer look. Inside, I scanned the room, feeling the mix of hope and irritation when I didn't see Molly. Is she here? Rebecca whispered, taking my hand. Nope, I replied, trying to hide my frustration. Maybe she's stuck in traffic, Rebecca suggested. Traffic? I scoffed. Venus doesn't have traffic jams. She squeezed my hand as we guided the kids to the counter. Okay, here's how it works, I said. First, you order your burger. Quarter pound, half pound, or full pound? 20 pound, Zoe asked, her eyes wide. Daddy's joking. 1 pound is the biggest, Rebecca giggled. Then you pick toppings. Bacon, cheese, or both, I continued. Can I do half bacon, half cheese? Ross pondered. Now you're getting it, I grinned. Then you go to the topping bar. Over 40 choices from blue cheese to jalapenos. I explained. Boogers? Bennett asked, giggling. Bennett, Rebecca said in a modern voice. No boogers. That's all on you. The girl behind the counter smiled. Sounds like you've been here before. Used to be my favorite spot, I admitted. Molly arrived about 20 minutes late, nodded at me, then dawdled over ordering and fixing her burger. When she finally sat down, she barely glanced at anyone. Hi, she muttered, slapping her tray onto the table. I noticed her small baby bump. About 5 months along. I asked. Aha, she said, stuffing her mouth with a burger. I'm 2 months along, Rebecca said gently, hoping to connect. That's nice, Molly replied without looking up. Your mom said you're getting married this Saturday, I said, keeping my tone level. Yeah, I heard you were coming, Molly sneered. Who cares? I came to see you get married, Molly. I wanted you to meet your brothers and sister, I said, trying to keep my patience. Fine, she said dismissively, taking a gulp of soda. I'm Rebecca, Rebecca offered with a smile. I'm sure you are, Molly smirked. That's her name, I said through clenched teeth. Rebecca Harmon, and this is Zoe. I'm 4, Zoe announced proudly. And these are your brothers, Bennett and Ross, I said. Guys, this is your big sister, Molly. Hi, Bennett said quietly. I'm 4, Zoe repeated, grinning. Hi, Ross added. So you thought I'd be all. Oh, hi. Great to see you. Don't worry about ditching me, huh? Molly snapped. No, I hoped you'd say. Hey, sorry I was a selfish brat, and active like spending time with my dad was a burden. But I've grown up, I replied, bitterness slipping into my voice. Daddy said crap, Zoe whispered to Rebecca. I heard him, Rebecca said, pinching Zoe's nose playfully. And I heard you say it too, she added with a wink. No, I was just telling Daddy. Don't bother, Daddy, Molly spat, shoving her tray so hard it spilled her drink. Don't come to my wedding. I don't want you there. No problem. I shrugged, grabbing the tray before the soda could spill further. We'll drop your gift off at your mother's, Rebecca added as Molly stormed out. Whatever, cow, Molly sneered, shoving the door open. She said, Zoe started. And if you say it, you'll get a spanking, Rebecca won gently. So what did y'all think of Billy's Burger Barn? Rebecca asked, trying to brighten the mood as we walked outside. Next time, more pickles, Bennett said. And barbecue sauce, Ross added. I couldn't help but smile at their enthusiasm. After a round of ice cream, I dropped Rebecca and the kids off before heading to the address Barbara Simmons, my attorney, had given me. I double-checked the address as I pulled up to the worn-down apartment complex. You can't park there. That's my boy's spot. You know what I'm saying. A teenager, maybe 15 or 16, called out. The sign says visitors, I replied, grabbing the wrapped gift from the passenger seat. Is your boy's name Visitors? The kid smirked. How about you let me hold $5? Not a chance. And pull your pants up, kid, I said, keeping an eye on the minivan as I knocked on Jenny's door. What? Who's there? What do you want? Her voice sparked from inside. It's Mark, I called, still watching the van. I'm here to drop off Molly's wedding present. Jenny opened the door smirking. Heard the meeting went well, huh? I held out the gift without responding. Where's Barbie? Who? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Your little Texas wife, she sneered. Go screw yourself, I shot back. Trade it up, and I'm more than fine with it. Ignoring her tirade, I turned and walked down the stairs, opening the van door. The kid from earlier sidled up, muttering, How about $1? Pull your pants up, I snapped. Do you even realize how ridiculous you look? The kid flipped me off as I got into the van. I revved the engine, laughing to myself as the kid fell back, startled. Later, I texted Rebecca to let her know I was on my way to Frosty's. Daddy got you a double-dipped double chocolate, Rebecca said when I walked into Frosty's with a grin. And I got you a big all sloppy kiss, I teased, kissing her noisily. Mark, quit it, she giggled as the kids laughed. My meeting with Ben went a little better than with Molly, but not by much. He sat sullenly across from me, barely lifting his gaze from the table. Thanks for the cheap Billy's Burger Barn gift card, he eventually muttered, barely containing his irritation. You're welcome, I replied, unfazed. $10 doesn't buy anything at Billy's, he grumbled. A quarter-pound burger, fries, and a drink costs at least $14. I know, I said with a small smile. Then why'd you send a $10 card? He asked, annoyed. So you'd have to pitch in a little, I replied calmly. Why'd you even come here? Ben demanded, anger bubbling to the surface. Honestly, I wanted to see if any of that kid I knew was still there, I admitted. Saw your sister. There's nothing left of the girl who played a tree in her first-grade play, smiling and waving at me from the stage. And I hoped I'd see some of those folks I used to go fishing with. Remember that rainbow trout? 6 pounds, 2 ounces, I said, reminiscing. Ben's expression softened slightly, caught up in the memory. Yeah, and the first thing out of Mom's mouth was, I'm not cleaning that thing. But she ate every bit of those fillets. How'd you get all those fillets? Ben asked, a hint of curiosity breaking through. I bought 3 more trout, I chuckled. As I walked out into the hallway, I heard him call, Dad. Dad, just as the door shut behind me. True to her word, Rebecca encouraged me to keep trying to reconnect with my kids. We even enlisted Barbara Simmons to represent Ben and his legal trouble, though it cost me $3,000. Despite our efforts, Ben ended up with a 2-year sentence in a medium-security facility, 5 Tribes Correctional. I learned I was a grandfather when Molly gave birth to a baby girl, Marie, though sadly, she only lived to be 8 months old. When I heard the news, I sent my condolences to Molly and her husband, grieving quietly for a granddaughter I'd never get to know. 7 months later, Rebecca gave birth to Nikki Harmon. Holding my newborn daughter, I felt both joy and a strange ache, haunted by the memory of the granddaughter I would never meet. 3 weeks after Nikki's birth, tragedy struck again. Rebecca, waiting for Zoe to come home from school, was hit by a speeding truck. Zoe witnessed the accident, and 3 hours later, Rebecca lay on life support. Stunned, I drove to the hospital, feeling numb as I held Zoe, though I could barely register her touch. When the doctor finally came out, his words shattered what was left of my world. Mr. Harmon, we did everything we could. She's in a better place now. I stood in silence, time slipping away until Zoe tugged at my hand and asked, Can we see Mom? Somehow, I found the words for the hardest conversation of my life. We might not see Mommy again, I said slowly. God asked her to stay with him in heaven. She's in a deep sleep, and she might not wake up for a long time. Zoe seemed to absorb this, nodding as she replied, Okay, let her sleep. The baby needs to eat, and it's been a long time without mommy. I couldn't tell if she was pretending or if she'd somehow grown up overnight, stepping in to hold our family together. 3 days later, Rebecca lay in her casket, dressed in her wedding gown. I placed my hand on her chest, feeling the emptiness where her heartbeat once was. The tears I'd been holding back broke free as I looked at the cross above and prayed, asking for just one more moment, a heartbeat, so I could tell her how much I loved her. Friends and family shared their eulogies, and then, to my surprise, Zoe, holding a small piece of paper, walked to the stand. My heart breaking, I slipped into the men's room, unable to cry in front of everyone, but I could still hear Zoe's voice over the sound system. My name is Zoe. I am 4 years old. My daddy is probably in a potty because he doesn't like people to see him cry. My mom is the most beautiful and strongest woman. My daddy told me God wanted her to stay with him for a while. I don't know when she'll come back, but I know she'll like it there. If she's watching me, I want her to know I love her and will miss her. My mom's name is Rebecca, and she's wonderful to me and my daddy. My little sister can't talk yet, but I know she misses mommy too. So God, please send her back soon. When I heard her say, "Please don't cry, everyone. My mommy is with God," I ran out and hugged her tightly, finally letting my tears fall. Zoe held me close and whispered, "I'm here for you, Daddy." 2 years later, Ben was released from prison, but within months, he slipped back into old habits, high on drugs and driving recklessly. He and a woman he'd hired lost their lives in a car crash. I attended his funeral but didn't speak, and I didn't console Jenny. After everyone left, I placed a white flower on Ben's grave. Jenny appeared behind me, saying, "I'm sorry, Mark. If only I'd kept our family together. My desire for more took away my husband, my family, and now my son. I never knew my actions would destroy everything." I said nothing and walked away. The last time I saw Jenny was at her funeral, 10 years later. Molly handed me a letter from her mother. "Mom wanted you to have this," she said quietly. Later, I opened the letter and read the simple words, "I am sorry." She had sought my forgiveness in her final days. I folded the letter and put it away, standing on the porch that night, lost in thought, when Zoe joined me. "I saw the letter," she said softly. I chuckled, giving her a side glance. "Didn't I teach you not to read personal letters?" "I forgot," she replied with a small smile. "She wanted your forgiveness, but she's gone now. Your hate won't affect her." "You sound like your mother," I said. "I can't help it. Must be in the genes." She paused. "If you forgive her, you don't have to tell her. Just tell yourself." I slept peacefully that night, amazed at how a 14-year-old could be so wise. As I stood on the porch, gazing at the quiet night sky, Zoe joined me, breaking my thoughts. "I saw the letter," she said softly. I chuckled, giving her a side glance. "Didn't I teach you not to read personal letters?" She smiled a bit sheepishly. "I forgot," she replied. "But all she wanted was your forgiveness. She's gone now, so whatever you feel won't affect her." I looked down at her, surprised by the calm wisdom in her voice. "You sound like your mother," I said quietly. "I can't help it," she answered with a light shrug. "Must be in the genes." She paused, glancing up at me. "If you forgive her, you don't have to tell her. Just tell yourself." Her words landed like a bomb, easing the long-buried resentment I hadn't realized I was still holding. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the past finally start to lift. I laughed, shaking my head. How did I get a daughter who's smarter than me? "Guess I take after my dad too," she said with a grin. I looked back up at the stars, the cool Texas night settling over us like a blanket. Life had thrown more than a few storms my way, but here I was, still standing, because of them, the family that gave me purpose, hope, and somehow, peace. As we turned to go back inside, I felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the life I'd rebuilt, but for the quiet strength that came from knowing I wasn't alone. Whatever came next, I had a family who'd stand by me, just as I'd stand by them. And somehow, that made everything feel whole. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.